Welcome to Shannons Club TV, the program for all motoring enthusiasts to reflect on Australian road and race memories. In each episode, we offer a unique perspective on our feature car's performance both on the road and in competition.
We'll also take an up-close look at our feature car with an owner's example, and we get the latest market news from the Shannons auctions team. Today, we look back on the local GM range that offered multiple V8 options, headlined by the mighty Monaro GTS 350, the HT and HG Holdens.
Because it looms so prominently in Australian automotive legend, it's now difficult to grasp that the HK Monaro was on the market for merely 10 months before it was succeeded by the HT. In many respects, this 1969 model was superior, but was compromised somewhat by the input of George Roberts, newly arrived from Detroit as Holden's chief engineer. All HT Holdens felt more refined and, in accordance with Roberts' predilection for an American-style boulevard ride, were plusher in their negotiations with the road. The sharp handling and steering feel of the HK were compromised, understeer was more pronounced. Nevertheless, there was no question that the HT Monaro, especially in premium GTS 350 guise, offered a broader appeal. Instead of its predecessor's afterthought tachometer mounted below the driver's left knee, it sat beside the speedo. You could even get an automatic transmission. Power steering and air conditioning were optional. Mark, the GTS 350 went to Bathurst as the underdog, but surprised everyone except perhaps Harry Firth.
Well, I think even Harry would have had his doubts as the new boss of the Holden dealer team, because the GTS 350 had a disastrous debut at Sandown about 3 weeks before Bathurst, when it ran out of brakes, speared off the track and then caught on fire.
Apart from that, everything else was okay.
Everything was fine. Yeah. So amazingly, he only had 3 weeks to knock that car into shape, but he did, of course, which I'll get to a bit later on.
Of course he did. Where the GTS 327 was a raw-boned racer, the 350 was a serious grand touring car that doubled as a Bathurst victor. But the biggest news for most HT Monaro customers was the new Australian 253 and 308 V8s. The 6-cylinder 186S remained the standard GTS engine with 3 optional V8s. Meanwhile, the 2-door taxi Monaro variant still got the 161 and 3 on the tree. For the buyer who couldn't afford the full-house GTS 350, a 253 4-speed was an appealing alternative. The HT GTS was offered in a broader palette of striking colours, including Sebring orange. When the mildly facelifted HG Monaro arrived in July 1970, the big Holden Coupe's racing duties were over. But the formula was essentially unchanged, with the biggest change being the arrival of the all-Australian Trimatic Auto, with the extra ratio and part throttle kickdown to replace the tedious Power Glide. There was a sense that the HG was slightly smoother and more refined, but the fact that it was not required at Mount Panorama means it is somewhat overshadowed by its predecessors. Mark, did the decision to replace the Monaro with the Tirana XU1 surprise punters at the time?
Well, it sure did, and particularly after the GTS 350 finished off the GTHO Falcons at Mount Panorama. The HT Monaro GTS 350, with its 5.7-litre Chevrolet V8, was not favoured to win the 1969 Hardy Ferodo 500 against Ford's superior Falcon GTHO. The Monaro's unfair advantage, though, was Harry Firth, who had taken charge of the newly formed Holden dealer team after Ford had replaced him with American Al Turner. Having won the 500-mile race 4 times, Firth had developed an intimate knowledge of what was required, and he applied that expertise to a 3-car HDT entry. Firth's approach was methodical and flawless. He found more engine power and cured the Monaro's brake, tyre clearance and gearbox problems. He also disciplined his drivers in mechanical sympathy, trained his mechanics in fast pit stops, and stuck with the tried and tested Michelin radials. Come the race, the multi-car GTHO attack fell apart due to tyre blowouts, as Firth's Monaros shattered Ford's pre-race favouritism by not only winning, but also finishing 3rd and 6th. John, the Bathurst Monaros, they were effectively the hero cars of a much larger Holden range. And one of the distinctive styling features of those cars, from HK to HT to HG, these beautiful wheel arch flares, which we first saw, I think, on the 1966 Oldsmobile Tornado. So a very strong US styling influence in that car.
Yes, there was. Yeah. And, a little known fact about the HT HG Monaros is that Holden, when they learned about the XR Falcon, actually stitched extra metal between the guard and the leading edge of the front door to match the size of the car. It was the XR Falcon that drove a lot of that.
And they really were halo cars. I mean, you had a big range of cars behind, which we'll get to a bit later on, with sedans and station wagons and all sorts of things. But the Monaro really drove the image at that time, didn't it?
It was the hero car of the range, without question.
Norm Beechey took his rightful place among the immortals of Australian motorsport when he won the 1970 Touring Car Championship in a GTS 350. It was the first time an Australian-made car had won the nation's most prestigious touring car title, and the first for Holden. Under the ATCC's new rule freedoms, the challenge of building an Aussie car to the standards of the latest US Trans Am factory races and European thoroughbreds was relished by Beechey, who, with the enthusiastic support of Holden, Shell and a small team of mechanics and engineers, designed and constructed a Monaro with Aussie know-how. The hand-built Holden bristled with clever homegrown engineering, including an immensely powerful 500 horsepower version of the 5.7 litre Chevrolet V8. The Aussie Coupe proved more than a match for the mega-dollar imports and was built with a fraction of their development budgets. Beechey's HT GTS 350 is arguably the greatest Holden muscle racer ever built, and given that it toppled the best imports from the US and Europe, it was also a world beater. Remember, you can build your own virtual garage on the Shannons Club website.
Hi, my name's Joe Farfalla, and this is my 1970 HG Holden Kingswood wagon. I grew up with Holdens my whole life. Family and friends had them. I've always been a fan of the HG Holden, and I've got a soft spot for the wagons. I said one day I got to own one, and here it is. Holden man through and through. I've owned the car now for 11 years. I bought the car from a gentleman in Sydney. He was the original owner. He bought it brand new. To my surprise, when he lifted the roller door, I didn't think I'd expect to find what I've got here today. It's a 253, three-speed manual car. It's all original, the car, body, paint, interior, and trim is all original. The only thing I had to do was rebuild the motor and painted engine bay and undercarriage. So I had it all rebuilt back to its original form of glory. Other than that, it's 100% totally original. I've been with Shannons from the start, from when I first brought it. Had it valued and everything through them. They've been fantastic. I've got home and contents and my other vehicle as well. And yeah, and never had a problem, and very, very happy. Always followed Peter Brock as a child, watching Bathurst every time it was on. You know, great fan of the Toranas and the Falcons and so forth. Other than that, like I said, always had a soft spot for the G. Oh, the plans for the future is just to keep it, enjoy it. I've got no intentions of selling it whatsoever. And as long as I'm capable to drive it, I'll drive it.
Shannons National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabon is here with a market update on the HT and HG Holdens. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, John. Welcome, mate. We have been concentrating on the GTS 350 Monaros in this episode, but this is a big range of cars. We had the Monaros, of course, but we had sedans, we had wagons, we had the utes and panel vans, of course,
and the Brougham.
And the Brougham, the luxury car. So, we're talking about a big range of cars.
Don't forget the fabulous white hot Holden. Who could forget that?
The white hot special.
This was their way of launching the Australian 253 V8.
Yes.
So you got a white car.
Only based on the HT sedan.
HT Kingswood, a white car with either blue or gold upholstery, Monaro wheel trims, 3 on the tree,
Yes.
Column shift.
and front disc brakes. What a combo.
That was really interesting. I mean, that was Holden starting to get into playing the limited edition options game, wasn't it?
I think it was probably a bit of that, I think. And look, it looked great with the wheel trims, and the Monaro wheel trims really worked on it. And a lovely little badge on the front guard as well for the V8. No, it's not something that we see much of at all. I mean, they're probably out there, but we really just don't see any come through Shannons auctions.
And would you think that would command a premium over otherwise the same car with a 6-cylinder engine?
It would have to, look, definitely. I think
so.
because there was, such few numbers built and probably now remaining survivors as well, it would have to. But I think they're pretty tightly held in enthusiast hands anyway.
Yes. We like to talk about pecking orders here when people are interested in a model, so I guess we have to start GTS 350.
350.
Monaro.
Manual.
And they did make a 2-speed power glide, the automatic Monaro, for the first time in this model. So that was pretty desirable as an interstate Grand Tour too, I would have thought.
Imagine if it had a 3-speed automatic gearbox in it.
Yeah, they never put that behind it.
No.
But we had a lot of great Monaro GDS models, the 186S, the 6-cylinder, but there was also the Aussie V8s
Well,
came
that
in.
was the big news with the HT, because it had you could get the 253 V8 engine. That makes the GTS with that engine quite an affordable package and much better than the 6-cylinder 186S, I think.
Yeah, and that was the first of the 308s that we saw as well.
Yeah, so there was a real move there after Ford sort of started that move toward the V8 engine. Holden really started piling them in, and even early HTs, I believe, still had some of the 307 Chevy V8s that were left over from HK. So that's a pretty rare sort of HT as well.
It wasn't interesting that when Holden did a 308 engine, it was only nominally a tiny bit bigger, but it was actually a much more powerful engine than the Chevy 307, a much more up-to-date engine designed totally in Australia.
And look how long we used that engine for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So GTS 350, how's that travelling in terms of collectability? That must just be going up all the time, isn't it?
It's amongst the top of the pecking order. I think the GTS 350 along with the HK 327 are the two at the top.
Roughly on a par. Comparing apples with apples, same
probably
condition
about
car.
right. Yeah, probably about the same.
Yeah, I mean we are talking about HT and HG GTS 350.
Well,
the GTS 350 HG just seems to be a bit of a forgotten car because
it is a bit, isn't it?
Yeah. Because it hasn't got the Bathurst provenance. And I should just mention that an HT Monaro GTS 350, a white car, was the first Australian car ever to win outright at Motor Classica.
That's right.
Which is a fantastic recognition of the car's iconic Australian status. Yeah, absolutely. But the HG gets overlooked because that wasn't a Bathurst weapon, even though it was a more refined, probably a better
fantastic
car.
Grand Tourer.
Yeah, it just hasn't quite got that. And I guess that probably shows in the auction values, does it, Chris?
Well, look, we don't see too many HGs come through. We do get a lot more of the HK and the HTs. I know we're talking HT HGs today, but it's, we do see more of the HKs and the HTs. And again, I think the Bathurst history of those two models, obviously what's helped the value of those cars over the years.
So quite a wide range of cars, and thanks very much for joining us
no problem at all.
Today, Christoph. And remember, you'll find all the latest market updates on the Shannons Club website. For your own lasting image of the HT and HG Monaros in competition, visit the huge archive at autopics.com.au.
Interesting looking back at the HT and HG Holdens, John, because if you add the HK to those, there was only 2 facelifts, HK, HT, HG. All previous models, only one facelift.
Only one facelift,
going right back to
FC and so on. Yeah,
exactly.
And the differences between the HT and the HG were really, really minor on the surface to look at the cars. The big change was the Trimatic transmission, which was an Australian-developed automatic transmission. That was quite a major breakthrough, really.
And the HT and HG, particularly with the HT, that signalled a turning point in Holden history because they stepped away from the battle with Falcon GTs and GTHOs and went the path of the Tirana for racing. So that really changed the course of history for the Monaro.
Yes, and also on the subject of wagons, these were the last wagons built on the same wheelbase as the Holden sedan, which in a sense made them a little bit more wieldy and perhaps more oriented to drivers than the wagons that came later.
Yeah, interesting models. Yeah.
We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the HT and HG Holdens, and we look forward to your company next time on Shannons Club TV.